The Compliance Perspectives podcast is sponsored by Case IQ, a global provider of whistleblowing case management and compliance solutions. Learn more at caseiq.com. Welcome to the Compliance Perspectives podcast. I'm Adam Turteltaub from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics and Healthcare Compliance Association. Joining us today from Barcelona is Anna Romberg. Anna is EVP Sustainability, Legal and Compliance for Gettinga. And today we're going to be talking about a really interesting article that, Anna, you wrote with Richard Bistrong for Harvard Business Review entitled How to Approach Business Ethics as Global Consensus Breaks Down. I was very intrigued, enjoyed the article a lot. First, I think it would be good for our listeners if you could share what you see happening on the global level.
Yes, hi Adam, and thank you for having me in your podcast. I'm so inspired always by your episodes, so I'm honored to be here. But so what's happening? Well, one thing, and that was really the catalyst for Richard and myself to write the article, because we were having a discussion and we were just like, what there seems to be like a divergence in terms of expected behaviors. And I think us who work in ethics and compliance, I think there's been a drive towards what is good business conduct and what does a good ethics and compliance program look like. It's not only abiding by the law, but really instilling good behaviors in organizations. And then somehow I think this what is good behavior. Somehow, yeah, Adam, I think we saw that this is now something where we seem to have different views. That something we think is should not be acceptable, then there starts to be challenging on that, and kind of on a global scale, also a divergence in terms of the globalization overall. So yeah, I think we had this really profound discussion on where is the world going in terms of values, and somehow values that we thought were common that doesn't necessarily they're not that common anymore. So yeah, that was kind of the triggering for this article.
And you in the article saw Europe going one way, the US going the other. I think it's fair to say that you advocate for business to follow its own course, regardless of that, based on its values. Would that be fair?
100%. So, regulations will always come and go. Political winds always come and go. And I think if we as companies sort of do not anchor ourselves in our own values and what kind of companies we want to be, there's going to be these twists and turns that do not create credibility and trust with our stakeholders. And I think this moment is a brilliant moment to really look at what are our values? What do we stand for? And why is it important? Has something been important just because it's kind of been a trendy thing? Or is it important because that's really what drives good business for us? So I think uh, that gives me at least a sense of calmness in this situation as well, to say that yeah, whatever regulation there is going to be, of course we're going to comply with that. The legal requirements for operating a business, they will always keep evolving and changing. But that's not really what's driving us in the ethics and compliance community. What's driving us is really to build resilient and long-term sustainable organizations, and that is grounded in something more than just legislation.
Now, you mentioned resilience. One of the other things you mentioned in the article is friction. You make a really interesting point that business should embrace friction. Can you share what you mean?
Yes, so friction is actually something that I started talking about when I worked with Michaela at Telia. When we experienced something we were not really able to kind of articulate, and I was doing my research and I was reading about ethical struggles and ethical frictions, and why the problem in many organizations is that we came into this and we think it's something abnormal. So when we in ethics and compliance, we are sort of faced with being challenged with really difficult discussions where somebody is just trying to run over us, and there are really differing opinions, and there is maybe questioning like what are you basing this on. the friction for me is actually something good. And that's been kind of a real watershed moment in my own work, where I've realized, like, whenever I feel this discomfort, I just feel like, okay, let's not have this discussion, let's find a solution, let's just move away from this because it just feels very uneasy. That's actually the point to realize and pause and say, hey, now we're maybe on to something, because friction is always a sign of change. And usually, when you have that friction, something feels, you have that uneasiness, there's probably something there that needs to be dealt with or discussed. And especially in this situation where we see differing views and perspectives and certain, norms and established policies being challenged, we were starting to have very polarized views. And I think in this moment, it's really important to say, okay, we may have differing views here. It may feel really uncomfortable, but that's even more a reason to discuss and really try to find the joint perspective, especially in business organizations, where we cannot have differing views without really talking through them.
Yeah, and people do have to work with each other every day in addition to having to navigate different regimes. Now, we're also seeing tremendous disruptions going on in the economy with tariffs, changing sanction regimes, and the possibility of a recession, all of which may increase the temptation to cut corners. How can we ensure that the organization remains ethically healthy despite what is going on around it?
Yeah, that's a $1 million question, and I think this is like when the pressure is on, right? That's when the behavior starts surfacing. So when everything is going great, and the top line is brilliant, and the margins are wonderful, it's easy to do the right thing, right? But now it's hard to do the right thing, in a way, to not squeeze the business and try to cut corners and so on. So, and I think that is the realization, to realize that this may be a time when it's hard to do the right thing. And we need to just keep reminding our leaders of the friction we talked about, and this uneasiness, and that this is not a time when we should start compromising on our values. It sends really mixed signals to our organization. It becomes very obvious, what's really driving the organization. And then if we communicate around values and responsibility and integrity and so on, that will not, nobody will believe us. So what we can do then, I think, two things to just remind our business leaders of that doing the right thing in this point of time probably is going to feel really hard, but we're here to support, and let's have the discussions. Like, whenever you feel there is a compromise in the making, let's lift the question and discuss it through. So to real because I think that's at least my own experience. You start seeing that you're being excluded from certain discussions. You hear that there were certain discussions or meeting taking place, but you're suddenly not invited. There is a reason for why they do not want to have me or you in the room. So I think that's kind of to be that little voice there, and keep reminding everybody that we should keep working and having the same discussions as we had before, and let's not exclude certain perspectives.
And people need to feel they can raise issues and talk about this, which leads to a last question that really isn't covered in the article. But with all these contrasting views out there, with all these change, it's going to be, it seems to me, extra hard to encourage employees to speak up during these times when they may be more fearful. How do we encourage them to overcome that hesitation and raise the issues that they see?
Yeah, we do not address it directly, but indirectly, when we talk about really enabling the conversations and these open feedback loops that we also talk about in the article. So I think that's it, right? You need to keep the conversation going, and always with creating a speak up culture comes the listen up aspect as well. So to make sure that you as a leader and your leaders really are listening and not belittling problems or issues or concerns. So I think we should just keep doing what we already are doing. That is encouraging the healthy dialogues, the feedback loops, actively seek feedback, and actively ask and prompt these discussions as well. Because as you say, maybe there is a hesitation now to speak up, but I think it's just keep the discussion going. And now I think it's a brilliant time for us also to see if our programs actually are working. Are we getting the benefits from our ethics and compliance efforts that we have put into good times? I think now our programs are being tested and stretched, and it's a good time to test our programs, right? We always talk about how will we test if they work, and now I think we are in an external environment that will put our programs to the test.
Well, they say the strength of a program is best measured when it's difficult times. So we'll be seeing a lot about which programs are this truly the strong one or not. Well, Anna, thank you so much for sharing these insights with us today. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. I'm Adam Turteltaub from SCCE and HCCA. I hope we're able to expand your compliance perspective.